Glenn Neiman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 6:30.
WMAL. It's 7:07 on the Morning Majority, and we have Byron York on the phone of the Washington Examiner. How you doing, Byron?
Doing great, Mary Catherine. How are you?
Long time no see.
Well, we saw each other a few hours ago in the Fox Green Room. I take it you got an hour or two of sleep.
Yeah, a little bit of a late night for me, but I'm hanging in there. And I did not have a Satan sandwich for dinner, so that's a plus.
No Satan fries?
No.
Wasn't it weird? I mean, didn't everybody get into just bizarre imagery yesterday?
I kind of enjoyed the Satan sandwich, I think. But so far we've got Slurpee, peas, talk turkey, and Satan sandwich and fries. So it's a balanced meal.
If people don't know what we're talking, we actually have that little clip of sound. Would you like to hear that? About what?
Yeah, Emanuel Cleaver.
Emanuel Cleaver, Representative Emanuel Cleaver, talking about, he's a Democrat, how he viewed this whole debt deal.
Until we see the details, we're going to be extremely non-committed, but on the surface, it looks like a Satan sandwich.
A Satan sandwich. I know you used that in your column in the Washington Examiner.
Well, the reason I used it is he wasn't the only one, because Nancy Pelosi then added, she said, well, with Satan fries on the side, and Sheila Jackson Lee, who was kind of trying to make sense of it all, said, we're eating some sandwiches we don't like. So there was this bizarre sandwich theme that emerged yesterday.
Overall, were you surprised, though, Byron, at how the vote went down? Because as I was trying to lay it out yesterday morning at this time, I really had some concerns that they may not be able to find the votes. Turns out they had no problem putting the votes together. They took a wide swath up the middle, and some on the left and some on the right decided they couldn't support the legislation.
I was not surprised once the leadership had signed on to it. You knew that they were going to be able to get that big group in the middle. And if you look at the vote totals today, the 161 who voted against it, it's really the people on every side. I mean, you just look at it, and these are all the guys you see on TV speaking from the farther edges of the left and the farther edges of the right. Those are the ones who voted against it, and that big mass in the middle voted for it.
Now, I wonder, moving forward, does the Boehner standard on raising the debt ceiling survive? Does it become the new standard? Has that the shift we're talking about here?
Well, as long as Republicans remain in control in the House, I think it does. Boehner had the really very creative insight to leverage an upcoming vote on raising the debt ceiling, which in the past had been basically routine, to leverage that into getting spending cuts, or to certainly into passing a 1-to-1 debt ceiling increase to spending cut ratio bill. That had not happened before, and Republicans are going to insist on doing it again. If they lose control of the House, then that's over.
How much of a problem was it that you've seen with activists that, as you note, the GOP did violate its 72-hour pledge in putting this bill forward? Obviously, they were up against a wall. Did that make people any more squeamish than they already were?
It was something that certainly the Tea Party activists didn't like, because in the Pledge to America, the Republicans had pledged to keep every bill up for 3 days in public before voting on it. That was a product of the whole Obamacare experience. But that didn't bother the Tea Party and conservative types nearly as much as the substance of the bill. And they have two big objections. One, they don't think the cuts are real. They know they're backloaded. There's just $25 billion of cuts next year. They remember when the Republicans pledged to cut $100 billion in their first year, and then it turned into 60, and then it turned into 32. They remember that. And the other thing is this commission, which they think is a classic Washington non-solution that will probably result in defense cuts and tax increases.
Yeah, what's your take on how that ends up? I mean, it feels to me like at least the conversation has changed. I have exceedingly low expectations for Congress, so I'm not terribly disappointed. But has the conversation changed, and could the commission end up actually coming up with cuts?
Well, on the phony cuts part, I think you have to be very skeptical on something that purports to cut $1 trillion and cuts only $25 billion in the first year. The farther they are out, the less likely they are to happen. On the commission, I don't think it's likely that it's going to result in tax increases, but it is absolutely biased in favor of defense cuts. It incentivizes Democrats to push for defense cuts, so that's going to be a huge fight going on.
I want to ask you, as you look at the landscape today, post this vote in the House of Representatives, who do you see as the people who came out the victors, and who are the biggest losers in this whole battle?
Well, I think, there had been a lot of talk about how John Boehner was weakened. He could barely get his own party to vote for his Boehner bill when 22 Republicans voted against it. But I think he comes out as a guy who changed the course of things now. So I think Boehner actually comes out strengthened out of this.
I agree with you on that.
That great video of him getting into the elevator and going, that shows how much pressure he was under, and I think he knew that if it went down, he would be terribly weakened. But if it went forward, which it did, he is strengthened. So I think John Boehner comes out stronger out of this.
And who loses?
Well, President Obama. And President Obama, with his standing with the, quote, Progressive Caucus. The Progressive Caucus in the House is 75 members. It is not a small thing, close to half the number of Democrats in the House. And Obama has always been worried about this move to the center alienating his base and making them less energetic than they might otherwise be in 2012. He's got a lot of repair work to do now.
Do you think that Boehner and sort of Republican leadership in general is ready for it sounds like we're going to have this fight once every 6 or 8 months with a commission or whatever it is, but a hardcore negotiation. I know this has been rough on him, and obviously the American people are not super happy about having these fights all the time. Are they and we in general ready for a sustained fight over this spending and the philosophy of government?
It doesn't matter if we're ready for it. It's coming. It's not going to be every 6 or 8 months. It's going to be every 1, 2, or 3 months. We've got fights over continuing resolutions. Senate has still not passed a budget. I mean, it's been 800, and you have to ask Jeff Sessions, but it's been 850-something days, I think, since the Senate passed a budget. Look, there are two main issues. For the public, it is jobs. And inside the Capitol, there is federal spending. And the fight over federal spending is going to continue as long as both sides are roughly equally matched in this. So it's going to happen certainly through the 2012 election.
Well, thanks so much for your...
Just one quick question. How do you think the Senate vote will go today?
I think the deal is going to win. It's going to be held to a 60-vote standard, but you're going to see exactly the same pattern that you saw in the House, which is the more ideological types on either side voting against it and the big blob in the middle voting for it.
Byron York with the Washington Examiner. Good to have you with us this morning.
Great to be here.